I found my coworker hanging in the walk-in freezer. But here's the thing. She'd been standing next to me 5 minutes earlier, and she was still warm. Asterisk, that was 3 years ago. Last week, she called my phone. What's up, everyone? Tonight, I'm sharing 4 stories that are going to mess with your head. These aren't creepypasta. These aren't urban legends. These are real events that happened to real people. Events so disturbing that some of them have never spoken about it until now. I'm talking about a hotel night auditor who discovered what's really in room 609, a gas station clerk who served the same customer twice in one night, except one of them was already dead. A 911 operator who received a call from her own future self, and a hospital security guard who learned why the basement is always locked. So lock your doors, turn off the lights, and let's dive into the darkness. Because after tonight you'll understand why some people never work the night shift again. Asterisk. I worked as a night auditor at the Grandview Hotel in Portland, Maine, for 8 months. 8 months that fundamentally changed how I see reality. My name is Marcus, and I'm sharing this because I need you to understand. If you ever check into a hotel and they offer you room 609 for free, you walk away. You run. Let me set the scene for you. The Grandview isn't some creepy roadside motel from a horror movie. It's a beautiful historic hotel built in 1924 with marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and the kind of old-world elegance that makes you feel like you've stepped back in time. During the day, it's bustling with tourists and business travelers. At night, it becomes something else entirely. My shift ran from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. I'd check in the occasional late arrival, handle guest requests, balance the books, and mostly just exist in this weird liminal space between yesterday and tomorrow. I loved it, honestly. The silence, the solitude, the feeling of being the only person awake in this massive building. The hotel had 200 rooms across 8 floors. Room 609 was on the 6th floor, at the very end of the east corridor. In my first week, I noticed something odd in the system. Room 609 was marked as permanently unavailable. Not under maintenance, not reserved, just unavailable. I asked my supervisor, Janet, about it during the shift handover. She got this look on her face. Not quite fear, but something close to it. Like I'd asked her about something she'd been hoping I'd never notice. "Don't worry about 609, she said. It's been that way for years. Just leave it alone. But here's the thing about being told not to worry about something when you're alone in a building for 8 hours. It becomes all you can think about. I started paying attention. The housekeeping logs showed that room 609 hadn't been cleaned in over 5 years. The maintenance records showed no work orders. It was like the room just existed outside of normal hotel operations. 3 weeks into the job, I had my first encounter. It was around 2:30 a.m., that dead zone where even insomniacs are usually asleep. I was doing my rounds, checking that all the hallways were clear, all the exit doors properly secured. I took the elevator to the 6th floor. The doors opened, and immediately something felt wrong. You know that feeling when someone's watching you? That prickling awareness on the back of your neck? It hit me like a physical wave as soon as I stepped into that corridor. The hallway was empty. Long burgundy carpet, cream-colored walls, those brass wall sconces casting everything in amber light. Silent except for the hum of the ice machine at the far end, I started my walk through, checking the fire extinguisher, making sure no room service trays were left outside doors. Everything normal until I got to room 609. The door was open. Not wide open, just cracked, maybe an inch. Enough to see that the room beyond was dark. My heart started hammering. I knew for a fact that door should be locked. It was never rented out. No one should be in there. I pulled out my radio to call security, but before I could press the button, I heard it. A woman singing, soft, barely audible, coming from inside room 609. An old song, something from the 1940s, maybe. The melody was sweet, but unsettling in the empty hallway. I should have walked away, should have radioed for backup, should have done literally anything except what I did next. I pushed the door open. The room was freezing, and I mean meat locker cold, the kind that makes your breath fog instantly. The layout was identical to every other room in the hotel. King bed, desk, bathroom to the right, window straight ahead. But everything looked old. Not vintage old. Decayed old. The wallpaper was peeling, brown water stains spreading across the ceiling. The bed was made, but the comforter looked like it hadn't been changed in decades, covered in a layer of dust. The smell hit me next, mildew and something sweet and rotten, like flowers left too long in a vase. The singing had stopped. I stepped further in, my breath coming in short white puffs. The temperature had to be below freezing. I could see frost forming on the window. That's when I saw her. A woman sat at the desk, her back to me. She wore what looked like a nightgown from another eerie, pale blue, with delicate lace at the collar. Her hair was done up in an elaborate style, dark and pinned, with what looked like pearls. She was writing something in a leather journal. "Hello?" my voice cracked. "Ma'am, you're not supposed to be in here." She didn't turn around, didn't stop writing. But she spoke, and her voice was like wind through dead leaves. "He said he'd come back for me. He promised." I took a step backward. "Ma'am, I need you to come with me." She set down her pen. I could hear it click against the desk in the silence. Then, slowly, she turned around. "I want you to understand something. I'm not a screamer. I grew up with 4 older brothers, played football, spent 2 years in the Marines. I don't scare easily, but when that woman turned around, I screamed. Her face was beautiful and terrible all at once. Porcelain skin, delicate features, red lips curved in a sad smile. But her eyes were completely black, not dark brown, not dilated pupils, black like the void between stars, and they were crying. Black tears running down her cheeks, leaving dark trails. "He left me here," she said, standing up. 63 years ago. He checked me into this room and told me to wait. He never came back." I stumbled backward, hit the doorframe. She glided toward me, and I mean glided, her feet not quite touching the floor. "Do you know what it's like to wait for someone who's never coming? To sit in this room day after day, year after year, watching the door, hoping this time it's him?" "I'm sorry," I stammered, which is an insane thing to say to a ghost. But my brain had short-circuited. She reached out her hand. Her fingers were so pale, they were almost translucent. "Will you wait with me? Just for a little while?" It's so lonely here." I bolted, ran down that hallway faster than I've ever run in my life, slammed my palm against the elevator button, and didn't breathe until I was back in the lobby. I told myself it was exhaustion. Told myself I'd fallen asleep at the desk and had a nightmare. Told myself anything except the truth, but I couldn't stay away. That's the thing they don't tell you about encountering something like this. It hooks into you. You need to understand it. You need to know it's real. So I started researching. The hotel records went back to 1924. In the archives, I found newspaper clippings from 1960. A young woman named Catherine Morrison had checked into room 609 with her fiancé. His name was Robert Kellerman. They'd driven up from New York City, planning to get married in Portland. The next morning, the maid found Catherine alone in the room. Robert was gone. His suitcase was gone. The ring he'd given her was on the nightstand. Catherine refused to leave the room. She kept saying he'd be back, that he'd just stepped out, that he'd promised to marry her. The hotel manager finally had to have her removed by police after 3 days. They found her body a week later. She'd hanged herself in a motel room 2 towns over. The suicide note said, "I'll wait for him forever." Here's where it gets worse. I found Robert Kellerman's obituary. He died in 1959, a full year before that trip to Portland. Car accident in New Jersey. The man who checked into room 609 with Catherine wasn't Robert. We'll never know who he was or why he did it. Maybe it was a sick prank. Maybe it was something worse. But he destroyed that woman completely, and now she's trapped in that room, waiting for a man who died before she even met him. I kept seeing her after that. Not just in room 609, she started appearing in other places. I'd see her reflection in the lobby mirrors. I'd catch glimpses of her pale blue nightgown disappearing around corners. Once at 3 a.m., every phone in the hotel rang simultaneously. When I picked up the front desk line, all I could hear was that soft singing. The final straw came on my last night there. I was in the break room, around 4 a.m., eating a sandwich and trying to stay awake. The TV mounted on the wall suddenly turned on by itself, flipping through channels rapidly. Then it stopped on static. In the static I could see a face. Her face, the TV speakers crackled, and her voice came through, "He's here." He finally came back for me. I looked up at the security monitor that showed the 6th floor hallway. The door to room 609 was wide open, and standing in the doorway was a figure, tall, wearing an old-fashioned suit. His face obscured by shadow. Catherine appeared behind him in the doorway, and even through the grainy security footage, I could see the joy on her face. She reached for him. The figure turned to face the camera. I still see that face in my nightmares. It wasn't human. It wore a human shape like a suit, but underneath was something old and hungry, and patient. Catherine took his hand. They walked into room 609 together. The door closed. I quit that night. Walked out at 4:30 a.m. and never went back. 2 weeks later, I heard from my old co-worker. The hotel had to close room 609 permanently. They had tried to renovate it, finally ready to put it back into circulation. When the construction crew opened the door, the room was pristine. Freshly made bed, clean carpet. No dust, no decay, no water damage. Like it had been perfectly preserved. But in the center of the bed was Catherine's journal, the one I'd seen her writing in. The crew supervisor opened it to the last page dot. It had one sentence, written over and over, in increasingly erratic handwriting, filling every page. He came back, 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 and at the very bottom of the final page, in different handwriting, masculine, careful script, no. But I did. They sealed the room again, covered the door with drywall, renumbered the floor so there is number 609 anymore. But I've talked to the current night auditor. He says that sometimes on quiet nights you can hear singing echoing through the 6th floor. And room 608? The room right next to where 609 used to be? Guests constantly complain about hearing knocking on the adjoining door. Knocking that never stops. Like someone desperately trying to get out. I don't work nights anymore. I can't. Because I learned something in that hotel. Some people don't just die. They wait. And something might be waiting with them, wearing a familiar face, ready to collect what it's owed. If you're ever in Portland and you see the Grandview Hotel, check the 6th floor from the outside. Count the windows. You'll notice something odd. There are 7 windows, but only 6 room numbers. The 7th window is always dark, but sometimes if you look carefully, you'll see a pale blue shape standing there. She's still waiting. Before we continue, I need to ask you something. If you're listening to this and your heart is racing, if you're checking over your shoulder, if you're feeling that delicious fear creeping up your spine, subscribe to this channel. Hit that button right now, because I've got dozens more stories like this, and I post new nightmare fuel every single week. Also, drop a comment and let me know. Would you have investigated room 609? Or would you have left it alone? I read every single comment, and I want to know what you would have done. All right, let's get into story number 2. And I warn you, this one is going to hurt.
This story comes from a woman named Sarah Chun. She's given me permission to share this, though she made me promise to change some identifying details. What happened to her 3 years ago didn't just scare her. It broke something fundamental in how she understood reality. And honestly, after hearing this, it broke something in me too. Sarah worked the night shift at a 24-hour gas station off Highway 40 in Missouri, one of those lonely stations that serves travelers at 3 a.m. when they're too tired to drive any further. Fluorescent lights humming overhead, coffee that tastes like battery acid, and that distinct smell of motor oil and hot dogs that have been rotating on the warmer since noon. She was 26 at the time, putting herself through nursing school, working 4 nights a week from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The pay was garbage, but it fit her class schedule and let her study during the slow hours. Sarah said most nights were routine. Truckers stopping for diesel, families on road trips, the occasional drunk person buying cigarettes. You learn to read people quickly in that job, who's just tired, who's trouble, who you need to keep an eye on. February 14th, 2021. Valentine's Day. The date is burned into Sarah's memory. It was about 1:30 a.m. The station had been dead for an hour, no customers, no cars passing on the highway. Just Sarah behind the bulletproof glass, studying for an anatomy exam, sipping her 4th coffee of the night. The door chimed. A man walked in, mid-40s, wearing a green jacket and a trucker cap. He had this weathered face, the kind you get from years on the road. He nodded at Sarah, that acknowledged but not really greeting that night shift workers exchange, and headed to the coffee station. Sarah watched him on the security monitor out of habit. He poured himself a large coffee, grabbed a couple of those little creamer containers, added 3 sugars. Then he picked up a bag of beef jerky from the display, tucked a newspaper under his arm, and came to the register. "Just these, thanks," he said. His voice was rough, like he'd been smoking for decades. Sarah rang him up. $8.47. He paid cash, exact change. Told her to keep the change from the $9 he gave her. "Quiet night," he said, pocketing his receipt. "Dead," Sarah agreed. "Stay safe out here." He gave her a 2-finger salute and walked out. She watched through the window as he climbed into a semi-truck, the cab reading Dalton Freight. He pulled out slowly, headed west on the highway, taillights disappearing into the darkness. Sarah went back to her studying. 20 minutes later, and this is where it gets weird, the door chimed again. Sarah looked up from her textbook. The same man walked in. Same green jacket. Same trucker cap. Same weathered face. Sarah felt her stomach drop. She glanced at the clock. 1:52 a.m. She looked at the door, then back at the man. He was walking to the coffee station. She watched, her heart starting to race, as he poured himself a large coffee, added 2 creamers, 3 sugars, grabbed a bag of beef jerky, picked up a newspaper, walked to the register. "Just these, thanks," he said in that same rough voice. Sarah's hands were shaking as she rang him up. $8.47. He paid cash, exact change from $9. "Quiet night," he said. Sarah couldn't speak. She just nodded. "Stay safe out here." 2-finger salute. He walked out, climbed into a semi-truck with Dalton Freight on the cab, and drove west into the darkness. Sarah immediately pulled up the security footage. She rewound to 1:30 a.m. and watched the first transaction. Then she fast-forwarded to 1:52 a.m. and watched it again. They were identical. Frame by frame, movement by movement, word by word identical. The same man performing the exact same actions in the exact same way. But that wasn't possible. She'd watched him drive away. Sarah's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her phone as she called the only person she could think of, her older brother Jason, a cop in Kansas City. "Jason, something impossible just happened," she said, her voice cracking. She told him everything. He listened without interrupting, and when she finished, there was a long silence. "Sarah," he said carefully, "I need you to lock yourself in the back room right now. I'm calling the local police. They'll be there in 10 minutes. "Why? What's wrong?" "Just do it. Lock the door. Don't come out until the police get there." Sarah did as he said, her whole body trembling. She locked herself in the cramped storage room that smelled like cigarettes and bleach, and she waited. The police arrived 9 minutes later. 2 officers, both looking serious. They checked the entire station, reviewed the security footage, took her statement. One of them kept looking at her like she was crazy or high or both. But the other officer, an older guy with gray hair, went pale when he watched the footage. "I need to make a call," he said and walked outside. Sarah sat in that back room for another hour, wrapped in a blanket someone had found, drinking terrible coffee, trying to understand what she'd seen. Finally, the older officer came back. He sat down across from her, and his face was grim. "Miss Chun," he said, "I need you to listen to me very carefully. The man you served tonight, both times, was named Dale Emerson. He's been driving for Dalton Freight for 18 years. "Okay," Sarah said, waiting. At approximately 1:43 a.m. tonight, Dale Emerson's semi-truck was involved in a single-vehicle accident about 40 miles west of here. His truck went off the highway, rolled multiple times, and hit a concrete barrier. He was killed instantly. The words didn't make sense. Sarah shook her head. No, that's not possible. I saw him at 1:52, after the accident. He bought coffee and… I know, the officer said. I watched the footage. I don't understand it either. He showed Sarah a photo on his phone. It was Dale Emerson's driver's license. The same face. The same man who'd walked into her station twice that night. The accident investigation is still ongoing, the officer continued, but preliminary reports suggest the accident occurred at 1:41 a.m. Miss Chun, you served a man at 1:52 a.m. who had been dead for 11 minutes. Sarah started crying then. Not scared crying that comes later. This was something deeper. Existential dread. The kind of crying you do when reality stops making sense. The officer told her more details. Dale's truck had security cameras. They'd recovered the footage. At 1:38 a.m., Dale was visible on his cab camera, driving, looking alert. At 1:39, he reached for something on the passenger seat, probably his coffee. At 1:40, his eyes closed. Not like he fell asleep. They just closed, and he never opened them again. The truck drifted right, went off the highway at 1:41, and the footage ended in a catastrophic crash. The autopsy would later show that Dale Emerson died of a massive brain aneurysm at approximately 1:39 a.m. The coroner said he was likely dead before his eyes even closed. The crash didn't kill him. He was already gone. So here's the question that has haunted Sarah ever since. The man who walked into her station at 1:30 a.m., was that Dale's living self, stopping for coffee on his way to death? Or was the man at 1:52 a.m. Dale's ghost, repeating his final routine, not yet aware he was dead? Or, and this is the possibility that terrifies me most, was it both? Was Dale somehow existing in two states simultaneously, living and dead, his consciousness fragmented across time in those final moments? Sarah tried to rationalize it. Maybe she dozed off and dreamed the first transaction. Maybe the timestamp on the footage was wrong. Maybe, but she couldn't explain away what happened next. 3 days after the incident, Sarah was working again, against everyone's advice, but she needed the money. It was 1:49 a.m. She was watching the clock, unable to stop herself, counting down to 1:52. At 1:51, the door chimed. Sarah's blood turned to ice. A woman walked in, late 50s, wearing a Dalton freight jacket, the kind they give to drivers' spouses at company events. She had kind eyes and gray hair pulled into a ponytail. She walked up to the register, and Sarah could barely breathe. "Excuse me, honey," the woman said. "I'm Dale Emerson's widow. I wanted to come by and… well, I heard what happened, that you saw my husband that night." Sarah nodded, unable to speak. Mrs. Emerson pulled out her phone and showed Sarah a video. It was dated February 13th, 2021, the day before Dale died. In the video, Dale was sitting in his truck, recording a message. "Hey beautiful," video Dale said. "Just wanted to send you a quick Valentine's message. I know I'm on the road tomorrow, but I'm thinking of you. I'll be home Monday. There's a little surprise waiting for you in my glove compartment. I love you, forever and always." Mrs. Emerson's voice cracked. He always stopped at this station on his routes. Same time, same order. Black coffee, beef jerky, newspaper. He'd call me from the parking lot after. Every single time. She wiped her eyes. "The police told me about the footage. About how he came in twice. Once before he died, once after." "I'm so sorry," Sarah whispered. "No, honey. I came here to say thank you." Mrs. Emerson reached across the counter and took Sarah's hand. The coroner said Dale died instantly, said he didn't suffer. But I've been wondering, where did he go? What happened to him in that moment? She smiled through her tears. But now I know. He stopped for coffee. He did his routine one last time. He went somewhere familiar and safe. And then he moved on. Mrs. Emerson squeezed Sarah's hand. I think part of him knew. I think he stopped here to say goodbye. Not to me, he'd already done that in his video. But to say goodbye to the routine, the roads, the life he'd lived. She let go of Sarah's hand and headed for the door. Then she paused and turned back. That surprise he mentioned in the video? It was a Valentine's card. He'd written in it, "I'll love you on every road, in every life, until the very last mile." She smiled sadly. He meant it literally, I think. Mrs. Emerson left, and Sarah never saw her again. But here's what Sarah can't stop thinking about. Dale's timestamp. He died at 1:39 a.m. He crashed at 1:41 a.m. He walked into that gas station, very much dead, at 1:52 a.m. What was he doing in those 11 minutes? Sarah has a theory. She thinks Dale's consciousness, in that moment of death, replayed his routine one final time. That some part of him, clinging to the familiar, walked that path once more, stopping for coffee, making small talk, heading back to his truck, living his life even after it had ended. And here's the truly haunting part. The day after Mrs. Emerson's visit, Sarah reviewed the full security footage from that night. She wanted to see if there was anything she'd missed. At 2:03 a.m., 11 minutes after the second Dale had left, a third figure appeared in the parking lot, visible only for a few frames. A man in a green jacket, standing by where the Dalton freight truck had been parked. He was looking back at the gas station, at Sarah through the window, and he waved. A simple, final wave goodbye. Then he turned and walked into the darkness beyond the parking lot lights, and the camera lost him. Sarah quit a week later. She's finishing nursing school now, working day shifts at a hospital. She doesn't work nights anymore. Can't. Because she learned something terrifying. We carry our routines with us, right to the very end. Our patterns, our habits, our comfortable repetitions. They're so deeply carved into us that even death might not break them immediately. And sometimes, in those final moments, we're living and dying simultaneously, present and absent, here and gone. Dale Emerson drove trucks for 18 years. Same routes, same stops, same routine. He loved his wife. He did his job. He lived a good, simple life. And when his brain betrayed him at 1:39 a.m. on a dark highway, his consciousness held on just long enough to finish what he'd started, to stop for coffee one last time, to complete his routine, to walk his familiar path, to live his last mile. Sarah says she thinks about him every day, about how we're all just one heartbeat away from becoming ghosts of our routines, about how the things we do every day might be the things we can't stop doing, even after we're gone. She keeps a picture of Dale Emerson in her wallet. Mrs. Emerson sent it to her, Dale in his truck, smiling, giving that two-finger salute. On the back, in Mrs. Emerson's handwriting, "Thank you for being the last person to serve him coffee. Thank you for being there at the end of his last mile." Sarah plans to work in hospice care when she graduates. She says she wants to be there for people at the end, to be present, to witness that final journey, because someone should be there at the end of the last mile. Someone should see them home. This story is different from the others. It's not about seeing something you shouldn't see. It's about hearing something you shouldn't hear, specifically hearing yourself. Meet Jennifer Ramirez. She was 29 years old when this happened, a 911 dispatcher in Phoenix, Arizona. If you've never worked emergency dispatch, you might not understand the toll it takes. You sit in a dimly lit room, wearing a headset, and you become the voice people hear during the worst moments of their lives. Heart attacks, car accidents, home invasions, domestic violence, suicides in progress. You hear people die. You hear children crying for parents who can't answer. You hear the moment someone realizes their loved one is gone. And you have to stay calm, professional. You have to ask the right questions, give the right instructions, dispatch the right units. You're not allowed to feel not in the moment. You feel it later, at home, in the dark, when the shifts catch up with you. Jennifer was good at her job. 6 years on dispatch, commendations, near-perfect composure. She talked someone down from suicide, coached a teenager through CPR on her dying father, guided a lost hiker to safety in the desert. She'd also heard people die on the line when help arrived too late. Heard final words, final breaths. Changes you. January 8, 2022. Jennifer was working the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift. Thursday night, usually moderately busy. She'd already handled a dozen calls. A traffic accident, a noise complaint, a possible prowler, standard stuff. At 2:47 a.m., her console lit up with an incoming call. 911 emergency line. She accepted it. 911, what's your emergency? For a moment, there was nothing, just breathing.
Panikid, rapid breathing.
Then a voice. Please, you have to help me. He's in the house. He's going to kill me. Female voice. Young, maybe early 30s. Terrified. Jennifer's training kicked in immediately. Okay, ma'am. I'm here to help. Can you tell me where you are? I'm hiding in the closet. Bedroom closet. He doesn't know where I am yet, but I can hear him looking. Oh God. He's breaking things. Ma'am, I need your address so I can send help. Can you tell me your address? 4729 West Coulter Street. Please hurry. He has a knife. I saw him. I saw. The woman's voice cut off into a muffled sob. Jennifer was already entering the address, dispatching units, checking the call history for that location. Officers are on their way, ma'am. They'll be there in less than 3 minutes. I need you to stay on the line with me. Stay quiet. Can you tell me who's in the house with you? My boyfriend.
Ex-boyfriend.
I broke up with him last week and he... Oh God! A crash came through the line. The sound of splintering wood. He's breaking down doors, the woman whispered. He's going room to room. He's screaming my name. Jennifer, please. Jennifer froze. The woman had just said her name. Dispatchers don't give their names unless specifically asked, and Jennifer hadn't identified herself yet. Ma'am, how do you know my name? Because you're me, the voice said. Jennifer, I'm you. This is 4729 West Coulter Street. That's your apartment. And in about 90 seconds, Marcus is going to break down your bedroom door. Jennifer's blood turned to ice. Marcus was her ex-boyfriend. She'd broken up with him 6 days ago. He'd been calling her constantly, showing up at her work, sending increasingly unhinged text messages. She lived at 4729 West Coulter Street. She was at work, but in her apartment. This isn't possible, Jennifer whispered. I'm here. I'm at the dispatch center. Check your phone, the voice said, her own voice. She realized now, distorted by fear but unmistakably her own. Check your personal phone. Look at the last message Marcus sent you. With shaking hands, Jennifer pulled out her personal phone from her bag. 7 unread messages from Marcus. The most recent was sent 15 minutes ago. I'm outside your apartment. We need to talk. If you don't answer your door, I'm coming in. Oh my God! Jennifer breathed. Jennifer, listen to me. Her own voice said through the phone. I don't understand how this is happening. I don't understand how I called you, or how I'm talking to myself. But you need to believe me. Marcus is in your apartment right now. He broke in through the back window. He has a kitchen knife, the big one from your knife block. And he's been drinking. Jennifer's supervisor, Carol, noticed something wrong and approached her console. Jennifer waved her over frantically. I'm putting units on emergency response to 4729 West Coulter, Jennifer said to Carol. Possible home invasion. Armed suspect. But she didn't hang up the 911 call. She kept the line open, listening to herself breathing in terror. Jennifer, I need to tell you things only you would know, the voice continued. So you'll believe me. So you'll understand this is real.
I'm listening, Jennifer whispered.
When you were 7, you had a recurring nightmare about drowning. Not in water, in darkness. You never told anyone because you thought they'd think you were crazy. When you were 15, you stole Mom's car and got into an accident. You told her it was hit in the parking lot. She never found out. Last month, you almost quit this job. You were sitting in your car after a particularly bad call, the little girl who called because her mom overdosed, and you broke down crying. You looked up desk jobs. You filled out 3 applications. But you never sent them because you felt like you'd be abandoning people who needed you. Jennifer felt tears streaming down her face. How are you? Because I'm you. I don't know how. I don't know why. But I'm you, and I'm in your closet. And Marcus is getting closer. Carol was staring at Jennifer, concern etched on her face. Jennifer showed her the text messages from Marcus. Carol's eyes widened, and she immediately got on her own console, calling for additional units, priority 1. Through the phone, Jennifer could hear Marcus's voice, distant but audible. Jennifer, I know you're here. Your car's outside. Stop hiding from me. He sounds drunk, future Jennifer whispered. Really drunk. And angry. He's saying things that don't make sense. Saying we're meant to be together. That he'll make me understand. That if he can't have me. She broke off with a gasp. What? What's happening? Jennifer asked. He's in the hallway. Right outside the bedroom. I can see his shadow under the door. The police are 3 blocks away, Carol said, monitoring the unit locations. Tell her to stay quiet. Jennifer, you need to stay silent, Jennifer said to herself. Help is almost there. I know, the voice said. I remember this call. I remember being in your chair, hearing myself terrified. It's like déjà vu except it's now. It's already happened, but it's happening right now. The sound of a door being kicked open came through the line. Jennifer heard her own voice let out a small, involuntary whimper of fear. He's in the bedroom, future Jennifer breathed. Oh God, he's standing in the middle of the room. He's swaying. He's staring at the closet door. He knows. He knows I'm in here. 2 blocks away, Carol said. 90 seconds. Through the phone, Marcus's voice, clearer now. Come out, Jennifer. We need to talk. I love you. You know I love you. Why are you doing this? Then his voice changed, became something uglier. Come out, or I'm coming in there to get you. Jennifer, her own voice said, eerily calm now. I want you to remember something. Remember what Mom told us after Dad left? She said, you are stronger than any man who ever tries to make you feel small. I need you to remember that. Because what happens next, what I'm about to do, you need to understand it was necessary. What are you talking about? 30 seconds until the units arrive, Carol said. The sound of the closet door being wrenched open. Future Jennifer screamed. Marcus shouted something incoherent. And then the sounds that came through the line were chaos. Shouting, crashing, Marcus yelling in pain and surprise. Future Jennifer's voice, fierce and strong. "Get away from me! Get out of my house!" More sounds of struggle. Something breaking. Marcus screaming, "You stabbed me! You crazy B***TSH! You stabbed me!" "Units on scene," Carol announced. Officers entering the building. Through the phone, the sounds of police radios, officers shouting, "Police! Drop the weapon! Drop it now! Ma'am! Drop the knife! Down on the ground! Both of you! I called 911. Future Jennifer was saying, her voice shaking. "I called for help. He broke in. He tried to kill me. I defended myself." Jennifer sat frozen at her console, listening to the aftermath. Marcus being arrested, screaming that she'd attacked him. Future Jennifer giving her statement, saying Marcus had broken in with a knife, that she'd armed herself, that when he found her in the closet, she'd fought back. One of the officers on scene picked up Future Jennifer's phone from where it had fallen. "Ma'am, you still have 911 on the line." "I know," Future Jennifer said. "Don't hang up. I need to talk to her." A pause, confusion in the officer's voice. "Talk to who?" "The dispatcher. I need to talk to the dispatcher who answered my call." The officer brought the phone to Future Jennifer. Jennifer could hear her own breathing through the line. "Jennifer?" Future Jennifer said. "Are you still there?" "I'm here," Jennifer replied, her voice barely a whisper. "You saved my life. Calling the police, getting them there so fast. If they'd been even a minute later, he would have hurt me worse. Or I might have. I had to stab him to get him away from me. It was self-defense, but still. You saved me from having to." "I don't understand how this is possible," Jennifer interrupted. "How did you call me? How were you in my apartment when I'm here?" "I don't know," Future Jennifer said. "But I think maybe this is what happens in moments of extreme terror. Maybe time breaks down. Maybe when we're desperate enough, scared enough, we reach backward to ourselves, trying to warn ourselves, trying to get help from the only person we trust completely, ourselves. That doesn't make sense."
No.
"Doesn't. But it happened. I called you. I called myself, across time, across space, across whatever barrier shouldn't allow this. And you answered. You helped me. You helped you." The line went quiet for a moment. Then Future Jennifer spoke again. Softer now. "Jennifer, I need you to do something for me. For us. When your shift ends this morning, I need you to go home. I know the apartment will be a crime scene, but you need to see it. See what almost happened. See what could have happened. And then I need you to make a decision." "What decision?" "Whether to keep doing this job. Whether to keep answering calls. Keep living in fear. Keep hearing people's worst moments. Or whether to send those job applications you filled out. Whether to choose a life that's yours on your terms. Not defined by emergencies. Not defined by trauma." Jennifer felt fresh tears on her cheeks. "What did you choose?" Future Jennifer laughed. A wet, shaky sound. "I haven't decided yet. But I will. We will." The officer came back on. "Ma'am, we need to take your phone as evidence. Say goodbye to your friend." "She's not my friend," Future Jennifer said. "She's me. And I need to tell her one more thing." "Jennifer," her own voice said through the line, clear and certain now. "Thank you. Thank you for being there when I needed you most. Thank you for being the voice that guided me to safety. Thank you for staying calm when I couldn't. That's what we're good at, isn't it? Staying calm. Being the voice in the dark." "Yes," Jennifer whispered. But we don't have to be that voice forever. We can choose. Remember that. The line disconnected. Jennifer sat at her console, staring at the now dark phone display. Carol was beside her, hand on her shoulder. "Are you okay? What just happened?" Jennifer shook her head. She couldn't explain it. She wasn't sure she believed it herself. But when her shift ended at 7 a.m., she drove to her apartment. The police tape was still up, officers still processing the scene. They let her in briefly to grab some necessities. She'd have to stay elsewhere while the investigation concluded. The bedroom closet door was splintered, hanging from its hinges. There were signs of a struggle, furniture knocked over, items scattered. And on the hardwood floor, a dark stain where Marcus had bled after future Jennifer had stabbed him in the shoulder with a letter opener. On her nightstand, her phone was in an evidence bag. The last call in its history, 911, duration 8 minutes and 42 seconds, made at 2:47 a.m. But Jennifer had been at work at 2:47 a.m. She'd received that call, not made it. Yet the phone records showed both. A call made from her personal phone to 911, answered by Jennifer Ramirez at Dispatch Console 7. A call that existed on both ends simultaneously. An impossible loop of cause and effect, a future reaching back to past, of Jennifer calling Jennifer across time to save herself. The investigators ruled it self-defense. Marcus was charged with breaking and entering, assault with a deadly weapon, and violating a restraining order Jennifer had filed the week before. He took a plea deal, 5 years, eligible for parole in 3. Jennifer took a leave of absence from Dispatch. 3 months to process, to heal, to decide. And on April 8th, exactly 3 months after the incident, she made her choice. She didn't quit Dispatch, but she didn't stay either. She founded a nonprofit that trains 911 dispatchers in advanced trauma response. She speaks at conferences about the psychological toll of emergency work. She advocates for better mental health support for first responders. She still takes dispatch shifts occasionally, filling in when needed. But now she does it on her terms. Because she learned something that night, something most people never learn. In our darkest moments, when we're most alone and afraid, the only voice we can truly count on is our own. Not some external savior, not luck or fate or chance. Our own voice, reaching through time and space and impossibility, saying, "You can survive this. You are strong enough. Help is coming." And sometimes we have to be that voice for ourselves. Jennifer still has the 911 recording. She's never listened to it again. She doesn't need to. She remembers every word of that conversation with herself. But she keeps it as a reminder, we are capable of saving ourselves, even when it should be impossible. Especially when it should be impossible. The final story tonight is the one that bothers me most. Not because it's the scariest, though it is disturbing, but because it's the one with no resolution.
No explanation. No closure.
Just a door that should never be opened. David Martinez worked hospital security in Denver for 11 years. Night shift, naturally hospitals need security around the clock, but night security at a hospital is a special kind of purgatory. You walk empty corridors where people have died. You pass dark rooms where families have said goodbye. You hear machines beeping, codes being called, emergency surgeries happening. You see things, not ghost things necessarily, but human things. Human pain, human loss. The stuff we try not to think about until we can't avoid it anymore. David had seen a lot. Aggressive psych patients. Gang members coming to finish the job. Grieving families who needed someone to scream at. He'd broken up fights. Restrained patients. Found bodies. But there was one part of the hospital he'd never entered, despite working there for over a decade. Subbasement Level 3. Ward B. Let me explain the layout. The hospital had 3 subbasement levels. Subbasement 1. Maintenance, laundry, food services. Normal stuff always staffed. Subbasement 2. Record storage, old equipment, mostly automated. David patrolled there occasionally. Subbasement 3. That's where it got weird. Subbasement 3 had 2 wards, Ward A and Ward B. Ward A was decommissioned patient rooms from the 1960s, when that level was still in use. Now it was just empty rooms with old beds, gathering dust. David had been there once during orientation. Creepy but empty. Ward B was different. There was a door at the end of Subbasement 3, past Ward A. Heavy steel, painted gray, unmarked except for a faded B stenciled on it. The door had a keypad lock, and according to hospital records, only 3 people had the code. The head of security, the hospital administrator, and one doctor, Dr. Patricia Huang, who worked in the psychiatric department. On David's first week, his supervisor had been clear. You patrol Subbasement 3, you check Ward A, but you never open the door to Ward B. You don't have clearance, and you don't need clearance. If there's ever an issue with Ward B, you call Dr. Huang immediately. Nobody else. Clear? What's in Ward B? David had asked. Classified medical records. Patient confidentiality. That's all you need to know. 11 years, David never questioned it. He'd walk past that door once a week during his rounds, make sure it was secure, and move on. Until 3 months ago, David was doing his 3 a.m. patrol. He took the service elevator down to Subbasement 3. The doors opened, and immediately he knew something was wrong. The lights in Ward A were flickering. Not the normal fluorescent flicker, this was rapid, strobing, like something out of a horror movie. And there was a smell, antiseptic mixed with something organic and rotten. David keyed his radio. David to dispatch, I'm in Subbasement 3. Possible electrical issue, lights malfunctioning. Requesting maintenance. Copy that, David. Maintenance is en route. ETA 15 minutes. David started walking through Ward A, checking the rooms. All empty as always. Dusty beds, old 4-stands, vintage medical equipment that should probably be in a museum. But as he got closer to the end of the hall, closer to the door to Ward B, the smell got stronger. And he started hearing something. Voices. Multiple voices. Talking over each other. Not loud, just above a whisper. He couldn't make out words. Just the cadence of conversation. Many conversations. Overlapping. David approached the door to Ward B. The voices were coming from behind it. His hand went to his radio, about to call dispatch, about to report. What? Voices behind a locked door that shouldn't have anyone behind it? Then the keypad on the door lit up. The screen, usually dark, was displaying numbers. September 15th, 1962. David stared at it. A date? September 15th, 1962? The voices behind the door grew louder. Now he could make out some words. Don't want to be here. Let me out, please. It hurts, it hurts, it hurts. Mommy, I want my mommy. Children's voices. Adult voices. Old voices. Young voices. All talking at once, all desperate, all afraid. David backed away from the door. The keypad's numbers changed. November 3rd, 1967. Another date. The voices changed too. Different people now, same desperation. They said they'd help, but they don't help. No more procedures, please, no more. I'm not sick, why won't they believe me? David ran. He's not proud of it, but he sprinted back through Ward A. hit the elevator call button frantically, rode up to the main hospital levels. He reported the electrical issue, said nothing about the voices. How could he? He'd sound insane. The next night, his supervisor called him into the office. "You went to sub-basement 3 last night," the supervisor said. Not a question. "Yes, sir. Routine patrol. The lights were malfunctioning. Maintenance said they found nothing wrong. Lights work fine. They were flickering when I was there." The supervisor studied him. "Did you hear anything unusual?" David hesitated. "Like what?" "Answer the question, Martinez." I heard voices. Behind the door to Ward B. Multiple voices. The supervisor nodded like he'd expected this answer. He pulled out a file old, the paper yellowed with age. "David, I'm going to tell you something that doesn't leave this room. Ward B isn't storage. It never was. From 1958 to 1978, this hospital ran a psychiatric research program in Sub-Basement 3. Ward B specifically. What kind of research? The kind we're not proud of. Experimental treatments for severe mental illness. Shock therapy, ice baths, sensory deprivation, lobotomies. A lot of it was considered cutting edge at the time. Most of it would be considered torture now." David felt sick. "How many patients?" "Over 200 across 20 years. Most were committed involuntarily. State mental hospitals were overcrowded, so they'd send the difficult cases here. Some were criminals deemed insane. Some were just inconvenient. Wives whose husbands wanted them gone. Children whose families couldn't handle them. Veterans with shell shock. What happened to them?" The supervisor closed the file. 37 died during treatment. The rest were transferred when the program shut down in 1978. Ward B was sealed. We keep it locked because legally, those medical records are still confidential, even for deceased patients. And because, he paused, because of what you heard. Others have heard the voices? Every security guard who's worked here more than 5 years usually starts the same way. Flickering lights, strange smells, then voices. Always at night. Always coming from behind that door. "What are they?" David asked, though he already knew the answer. "I don't believe in ghosts," the supervisor said. "But I believe that suffering leaves an imprint. All that pain, all that fear, all those people who begged to be let out and never were. Maybe it doesn't just disappear. Maybe it lingers." David went back to Sub-Basement 3 the next week. He had to know. The lights were normal.
No smell. No voices.
But when he approached the door to Ward B, the keypad lit up again. April 27, 1975. David pulled out his phone and took a picture. Then he went to the hospital archives and looked up records from April 27, 1975. He found an incident report, stamped confidential. Patient W, 247 expired during experimental procedure at approximately 0315 hours. Subject experienced severe adverse reaction to medication. Resuscitation unsuccessful. Dr. Huang supervising. Body transferred to morgue. David checked other dates that had appeared on the keypad. Every single one corresponded to a date when a patient had died in Ward B. The dates appeared in no particular order, sometimes from the 1960s, sometimes the 1970s. Like the ward itself was cycling through its history, replaying its worst moments on a loop. David made a decision. He contacted Dr. Patricia Huang, the one doctor with access to Ward B. She agreed to meet him, but not at the hospital. They met at a coffee shop, and Dr. Huang looked exhausted, decades older than her 68 years. "You've been hearing them," she said. Not a question. "Yes, the voices, the dates. My grandmother was the Dr. Huang who supervised Ward B, she said. She died in 1989 when I was in medical school. Before she died, she made me promise something. That I would never let anyone open Ward B. That I would keep it sealed until the hospital finally tears down this building and turns it into rubble. Why? Because my grandmother believed, and I believe, that what happened in Ward B was so horrific that it tore a hole in reality. That the suffering was so intense it created a kind of loop, trapping those moments in time. She said the voices aren't ghosts. They're echoes. The ward is playing back what happened, over and over. Can't we do something? Get a priest or... Dr. Huang shook her head. My grandmother tried. She brought in clergy, mediums, paranormal investigators. Nothing worked. Whatever is behind that door isn't evil. It's just pain. And you can't exorcise pain. You can only remember it, honor it, and make sure it never happens again. So we just leave it? Yes, we leave it. We keep it sealed. And we remember that medicine, like any human endeavor, is capable of terrible things when we forget that patients are people, not experiments. David asked one final question. Have you ever been inside Ward B? Dr. Huang's face went pale. Once, when I inherited my grandmother's access codes. I opened the door. I looked inside. What did you see? An empty hallway, old patient rooms, medical equipment from the 1960s and 70s. Everything covered in dust, exactly as it was left in 1978. That's all.
No.
She looked directly at David. At the end of the hallway, there's a common room. In that room, sitting in chairs, standing by the windows, lying on the floor, were patients. Dozens of them, wearing hospital gowns from decades ago. They weren't ghosts. They were too solid, too real. But they weren't alive either. They were just there, existing, trapped. Did they see you? Yes. They all turned and looked at me when I opened the door.